Ready here. Good morning. This is Nick Augustine hosting the Healthcare Consultants podcast brought to you by the Chicago Health Law and Professional Licensing firm of Michael V. Favia and Associates. Today, our guest is Dr. Handa, and she's a board-certified internal and lifestyle medicine physician here to explain how metabolic dysfunction impacts energy, focus, and long-term health, and how her CogniBios Framework helps professionals restore clarity and vitality before disease develops. Good morning, Dr. Handa.
Good morning, Nick. Thank you for having me. How are you doing today?
I am doing well, and I am personally a nutrition person, and I go to the gym and I focus on health. And I just learned that the cakes that I was buying, on the weekend, my sweet treat at the grocery store had emulsifiers and soybean and vegetable oils in it. So it's back to finding a natural product. But I learned a lot in my own weight loss journey about what we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to be talking about all the things that are going to make us healthy and return ourselves to just a better state of health, and get to good metabolic function. So first, let's talk about a clear understanding. Tell us, what is your professional background, and can you share your path from internal medicine into lifestyle medicine, and what led you to develop this framework? What was that moment that you said, I need to build this?
Of course. Let me start here. So, I have been working as a hospitalist for 12 years. For anyone who does not know that, it means I was taking care of the sickest patients inside the hospital. Long shifts, very ill people, and a lot of families in crisis. And I kept seeing the same pattern, the same heart attacks, strokes, uncontrolled diabetes, early dementia, different faces, but same diseases over and over. And almost none of it was caught early. I would be discharging people in their 50s or 60s with 8, 10, 12 medications, and most had never had told that there was another way, that something could have been done 15, 20 years earlier. Then it became personal in two ways at once. I started watching my own friends and family, people in their 30s or early 40s, getting diagnosed with prediabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol level, fatty liver, new onset anxiety and depression. Real people I grew up with, people who thought they were eating healthy. And then my own body started speaking as well. The brain fog I had, the 2 p.m. crashes, the sleep was not refreshing anymore. Weight was shifting in places I never had before. And then I went and got my standard labs. You know what? They came back fine, of course. And
Wow.
that's when it actually hit me. If I, as a physician, was struggling to connect my own dots, what chances does the average busy professional have?
Right, right.
And
Talk about the six pillars and how they work together to address the root causes rather than just symptoms.
yeah, and my story, that's what led me to make this framework CogniBios. It
Mhm.
was it is built on six pillars of lifestyle medicine: nutrition, movement, sleep, stress, social connections, and avoiding risky substances. That includes plastic as well. But this is adapted specifically for busy, midlife, high performing professionals, built to fit into real life, not into a clinic visit. And because conventional medicine treats symptoms, for example, high blood pressure gets a pill, high cholesterol gets a pill, depression gets another pill. So, 4 or 5 symptoms, 4 or 5 pills, zero conversations about why. The six pillars work because they all touch the same root: your metabolism, your inflammation, and your nervous system. Sleep regulates blood sugar regulates mood regulates food choices, and food choices regulate our third brain or second brain, I would say, the gut bacteria. Gut bacteria in turn regulate inflammation, and inflammation regulates sleep. So it's a very closed loop. So when you fixed one pillar, you nudge all of them. And when you fix three, the whole system reorganizes. That's why people on a true lifestyle medicine protocol often come off 3 or 4 medications at once. The route was always the same. And that's what CogniBios is built to do, not chase symptoms, but address the symptoms.
Wow, getting off of the meds, that's huge. And a lot of people see so many positive impacts from that. So let's define terms as we move forward, looking at metabolic dysfunction. What is metabolic dysfunction and why is it so often missed in standard medical evaluations?
Yes. So metabolic dysfunction is what happens when your cells stop responding properly to insulin, the hormone that controls blood sugar, fat storage, and energy. It's the seed of nearly every chronic disease we worry about. Name it: type 2 diabetes, heart disease, fatty liver, Alzheimer's, and even some cancers as well. And it is missed for one big reason. The reason: the tests doctor used to detect it are the wrong test, or these are ordered too late. Standard panel run fasting glucose and A1C to detect diabetes, for example. The problem is these don't move until 10 to 15 years after insulin resistance has already started. And by the time your A1C flips abnormal, the damage has been compounding for a decade or more. So the question is, what test should doctors order? I will name few. Fasting insulin, HOMA IR, ApoB and lipoprotein A. These are the big ones, especially for true cardiovascular risk assessment. High sensitivity CRP and thyroid panel. When someone walks out of their physical and the doctor says your labs are fine, what that often really means is your labs aren't catastrophic yet.
Interesting. So, what are the early signs that people are tending to overlook? The ones that they sort of shrug off as getting older, while something, as you said, is going on underfoot. While the labs seem normal, we might not be feeling all right.
Yes, the ones I hear every single day. The 2 p.m. energy crash, the one where
Mm.
you can't think and you reach for coffee or sugar. I used to reach for cookie after my lunch. Waking up at 3 a.m., mind racing, brain fog, weight gain around your middle, especially the abdominal fat, increasing irritability or anxiety that was never there before, sugar cravings that feel disproportionate, skin tags, dark patches. These are called acanthosis nigrans. You don't need to remember the word. These are medical terms, but it is a sign of insulin resistance. Recurrent yeast infections or UTIs, and snoring or unrefreshing sleep. People dismiss these as, oh, I'm just stressed or I'm just aging. They are not. These are the early warning signs, and almost every one of them is reversible if you act on them now instead of waiting 15 years.
Yeah, well, a lot of people think that that's just what happens when you get older, and so many people have accepted it that we don't think otherwise. So we really can do a lot. And one of the things that we need to talk about today is cognition. It's so important. So, how does metabolic health directly impact cognitive function and our focus with our day-to-day performance?
So there's a connection between your brain, sorry, and your biology. And it's the entire reason I called my company CogniBios, cognition and biology. Your brain is your biology. Your brain is the most metabolic demanding organ you have. It's just 2% of your body weight and burns 20% of your energy. It runs almost entirely on glucose, about 120 grams per day. So when your metabolism wobbles, your brain wobbles first. Three specific things happen. Number one, the glucose roller coaster. For example, if you ate highly processed carb lunch, it spikes your glucose to 180, then it crashes down to 70 quickly. That's the 2 p.m. fog, the irritability, the can't remember anything. That's not a willpower problem, that's a glucose problem. Number two, the insulin resistance in the brain is now called type 3 diabetes. Researchers are seeing the same insulin resistance that causes type 2 diabetes in the body, it shows up in the brain. It's the major driver for Alzheimer's. People with metabolic syndrome have meaningfully higher risk of dementia decades later. And number three, the chronic inflammation crosses blood-brain barrier as well. When your gut is inflamed, when your visceral fat is inflamed, those inflammatory messengers, they reach your brain as well. They interfere with the neurotransmitters. That's what makes you anxious. That's what makes you tired. And that's what makes you slow down. So when professionals come to me saying, I just don't feel sharp anymore, I tell them this is not a personality change. This is not aging for sure. This is the metabolic signal showing up in your cognition. Fix the metabolism, the cognition will come back, usually within 4 to 8 weeks.
That's good information. And, the results, it's interesting to see I'd be interested to see how they measured those things and what the testing was and all that, because it's got to be very interesting. So let's go now through these six pillars. Walk us through each one of them practically so people listening know exactly what they can do.
Yes. So, six pillars are, as we discussed before, nutrition, physical activity, restorative sleep, stress management, social connections, and avoiding risky substances. Each one matters alone, and together they are a powerhouse.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope that more people can get back to the social thing because that's something that a lot of us end up missing out on because everybody's at home. People with COVID got used to being at home and it's time to get it back out there. But let's first start with food. That's what we can control every day. And there's so much conflicting information about food out there. There's GLP-1s on the market. We are inundated with and it's a big business, the business of diet and exercise and everything. So people have a good right to be curious and skeptical about things. But let's get specific about foods and how they are going to affect our metabolism with carbs, protein, and fiber. So, what's the real truth?
Let me start with busting the biggest myth first. Carbs are not the enemy, the wrong carbs are. The largest study on this, the Siedelman study, over 25 years of follow up and 432,000 people. That's a huge number. So, what it showed, eating less than 40% of calories from carbs, it increases your mortality by 20%. Eating more than 70% calories, same thing, 23% higher mortality. The sweet spot is 50 to 55% of calories from carbs. And critically, people who replaced carbs with animal protein or fat, we see them eating keto diets these days, they had higher mortality as well. People who replaced their carbs with plant protein instead, they had 18% lower mortality. Same calories, different source, different outcome. So, why are carbs important, right? Because of the fiber in them, the plant-based carbs I meant. Fiber-rich carbs, they feed your gut bacteria. Remember our second brain? You get
Mhm.
magnesium, vitamins, polyphenols, all from vegetables. You can get them from steak. The shift is from processed carbs, bread, soda, chips, sugar, to whole carbs, beans, lentils, oats, quinoa, fruits, vegetables, etc.
Okay. So, with animal protein, and, I often think about evolution and what we share with primates, and someone mentioned to me, if we were meant to be huge meat eaters, we'd have teeth that would have been for that, and our jaws would have been thrashing instead of mashing. So it makes sense to cut back on some of the animal protein. Some of it's probably good, but I think that too many people are having way too much. So should people be cutting back? It's kind of sounds like it.
Yes, that's what the evidence shows. It's very clear, but I don't want people to think I'm judging them or I'm saying do not eat any animal protein. I'm just going to go over the studies and then you decide what works for you the best. The the most evidence we have is for processed meat and red meat. For example, there was a Harvard study in 2016. It showed replacing just 3% of your calories from animal protein with plant protein, it significantly lowered all cause and cardiovascular mortality. Another study on 1.4 million adults actually, every 50 grams a day of processed meat increases cardiovascular risk, that is your heart disease risk, by 26%. And every 100 grams of unprocessed red meat a day, 11% higher risk of heart attack. And then I was very fascinated by this study in Lancet Planetary Health 2024. It discussed and it showed if Americans cut processed and red meat by 30%, not fully, just by 30%, we would prevent over 1 million cases of type 2 diabetes, 400,000 cases of cardiovascular disease, 84,000 cases of colon cancer, and 62,000 deaths in 10 years. These are big numbers. And the WHO classified processed meat as group 1 carcinogen in 2015. It's been 11 years. They said eating processed meat is equal to tobacco or asbestos in terms of their cancer risk. So, what should we do? We should have half of our plate filled with vegetables, quarter with whole grains or starchy vegetables, quarter protein with at least one plant based source per day. If you can do 3 meals, but at least one meal, add beans, lentils, chickpea, tofu, edamame. Aim for 20 to 30 grams of protein per meal.
Yeah. Well, try different things and figure out what you like. And because if it's not, if you don't like what you're eating, it's not going to be sustainable. And there are a lot of ways to cook and prepare things that work out really well. I know I had to make changes like that. And it, over time, like I have, I've learned, what nutrients I'm getting from a regular potato is different from, enzymes or, vitamins I'm getting from another one. There was, sweet potatoes, for example. So, and both are full of fiber. So let's talk about fiber next.
Yes, because the average American, they get 12 to 15 grams of fiber per day. You know how much we need? We need maybe 50, 60, or even higher. But the minimum we need is 30 to 40 grams of fiber every day. And we are literally half starving the part of our biology that runs our immune system, our metabolism, and our mood. That is our gut bacteria.
Hmm.
So, when you eat fiber, you're not just feeding yourself, you're feeding those 40 trillion bacteria in your gut. They ferment the fiber and produce short chain fatty acids. And these short chain fatty acids do four magical things. They fuel and protect the lining of your colon. They powerfully reduce inflammation body wide, improve insulin sensitivity so your diabetes get better, regulate your appetite, mood, and brain through the gut brain axis. So, when someone has a brain fog, fatigue, bloating, anxiety, sugar cravings, before I do anything fancy, I ask, how much fiber are you eating? If their answer is 15 grams, I know exactly where to start. So the
Yeah.
fiber four is something I tell them to do. Easiest moves to go from 15 to 30 grams. Just 2 tablespoons of ground flax seed daily, like in oatmeal you can add to yogurt. It's 6 grams of fiber. Half a cup of beans, around 8 grams of fiber. Berries instead of juice. So please stop drinking juice if you are. It has no fiber, it has no health benefits. Berries have half a cup, 4 grams, and leave the skin on your apples and potatoes, as you said. If you want to eat it, leave the skin on so that you get some fiber. Just one thing, but I want to warn you. If you are starting to eat fiber, add just 5 grams a week and slowly build it up. Drink a lot of water. Your gut bugs need time to adapt, or you will be bloated, gassy, and abdominal discomfort can happen as well.
Yeah. What about popcorn? People always say popcorn's a magical superfood.
Popcorns, it depends where you are getting it from. If you're buying the packaged food, obviously they are heavily loaded with butter, salt,
Yeah.
and other chemicals, then no. But if you're just popping your own popcorns in a pan at home, I think that's a good snack. Why not? It's natural, it's vegetarian again, and you need to feed your mind with some good healthy snacks. And I love popcorn. Why not?
I ate popcorn every night when I was losing. I lost 40 pounds in 4 months, and I was really aggressive at it. And I had popcorn with real butter and sea salt. And I noticed, but the big thing was I had to have the right extra virgin olive oil, and I got the right extra virgin olive oil that's single pro, pressed. There's a whole list and like the correct stuff. And if you ever get the stuff that's like the cheap stuff, because they ran out at Target, and I had to do a substitute olive oil, and I noticed difference in potatoes, popcorn things. So, there's a lot to the, learning what kind of oils. And it's like you learn, oh no, I think I've gotten all my food things right. And I've got this vegetable oil that I've been using forever. And it's like, you think you've got everything figured out and then you keep finding things. So it's an ongoing thing. And people, like anything else with exercise and all the other things we're going to talk about in these pillars, it takes practice and commitment, but you'll see results. And I noticed when I talked about removing my foods with the emulsifiers and the seed oils, I noticed results pretty quickly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's move on to pillar two. Let's talk about movement. Once we get our food right, once we are fueled properly and look at food as fuel, we need to move. So, but most professionals say, I don't have time to move.
Well, I have some good news for those professionals who say I don't have time to exercise. You don't need 60 minutes at gym every day. All you need is exercise snacks, those frequent tiny bursts of movement throughout the day. They work nearly as well as for insulin sensitivity as one long workout. You can do 20 squats every bathroom break. If you do 5 to 8 sets a day, 100 squats by dinner. 10 wall push ups every coffee or water refill. 10-minute walk after every meal. I tell it to every patient I meet. You have to go for a 10-minute walk after every meal. And we'll talk about it, why it's so important. Then you can take stairs every time. Park your car far away. Those few things, I think it matters a lot when they add up. But one thing is, 2 20-minute strength sessions per week, they are non-negotiable. Muscle is your metabolic insurance policy in midlife. So that's something 20 minutes just twice a week you have to take out to do your strength sessions. If we go by guidelines, they recommend 150 to 300 minutes of moderate movement per week, plus strength training twice a week. But it does not have to be in one block. Add up the snacks and see how it works for you.
Yeah, right. So, let's say we're eating well, we've got our movement. We're probably going to sleep better, right? So, sleep, let's talk about what's the simplest framework here.
I'm gonna give you some shocking data here. Just 1 week of 5 hours night instead of 7 to 8 hours that's recommended, it significantly drops insulin sensitivity in healthy people and puts them in pre-diabetic numbers. Just 1 week. You cannot out eat or out exercise poor sleep. That's how much sleep is important. And how do we get proper healthy sleep? You just need to do 5 simple things. Same wake up time every day, weekends as well. Body forgives a late bedtime more than a chaotic wake up time. 10 minutes of sunlight in your eyes with the first hour of waking. Outside, go outside, no sunglasses. It's free, it's very relaxing. No caffeine 8 hours before bed. The 3 p.m. coffee is still working at 11 p.m. No screen 60 minutes before bed, and sleep in a cool, dark room, 65 to 68 degrees. Aim for 7 to 9 hours. And if you snore or wake unrefreshed, get screened for sleep apnea. Untreated apnea is a metabolic catastrophe. So you just need to do simple things to improve your sleep, and you have to sleep 7 to 9 hours. That's the thing I want to tell you guys.
I need to get better about not having coffee later in the day. Like to cut it off at like three or something like that. But yeah. All right. Next. Now that we're sleeping well, let's talk about stress. Beyond just meditate, what actually works?
I think meditation is become another social media, a thing that people are trying to follow. And somehow I hear it all the time that they can meditate, they can sit idle. I want you to know, Nick, meditation means connecting with yourself. That's what actually the word meditate means, connect. So it's connecting with your own self. So you become your own best friend. So you don't have to sit again in the morning, half an hour, doing some, breathing exercises. The reason we focus on breath is because we connect with ourselves, and the easiest way is through your breathing. So, meditation or stress reduction, it has two levels of stress. There are two levels of stress management. Daily, that you can use 90-second resets to incorporate and slowly build up your meditation routine, and structural. So you can do box breathing like inhale for 4 seconds, hold for four, exhale four, and hold for four. 5 rounds of these, it drops your cortisol fast. And in times of extreme stress, like before a meeting or or a podcast interview, I would say, the physiological sigh works like wonders. 2 quick inhales through the nose, like you take a deep breath and take another deep breath and long exhale through the mouth. 3 rounds. This is the fastest nervous system reset there is. I'll share what works for me. The alternate nose breathing, like you inhale from one nose and exhale through the other. You do it for 10 times, suddenly you are calm, you can get through any stressful meeting and try it out and see what works for you. The structural part, this is little harder. This is for us to learn to say no. Every yes is no to your sleep, to your health, and someone you love. Block deep work times on your calendar before someone takes it. And please stop checking email after 7 p.m. because that's hindering your sleep.
Yes. I try to avoid that. I've also avoided social media in the morning. The first part of my day, I'm choosing not to clog with other people's thoughts and opinions and clickbait. So and I've been reading and spending more time. I just spent time hanging out with the cat. She wants to sit. We have the sun comes in a room where I have a
Mhm.
home exercise gym, and she meows and screams, Papa, come up here. And we stretch and I drink coffee and we just kind of hang out. And it's a good time for everyone. And I like the breathing part. You talk about box breathing, and I've been reading a lot about that. And it helps me feel better. So let's talk
Try,
about, yeah,
yeah, try the alternate nose breathing as well. It really
yeah,
works.
I will. I like that too. Not always possible with the allergies we have here in Texas, but every day is a challenge. Let's talk about connection next. This is pillar number 5. Connection, so important.
This is one of the most important thing that professionals neglect, and the data is brutal. Loneliness has the mortality impact of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. People with strong social ties, they live longer, they have low blood pressure, and they recover faster from illness. But quality over quantity. 2 or 3 deep relationships between two beats 200 social media followers every time. Schedule connections like a meeting, a weekly walk with a friend, a monthly dinner. Otherwise, it does not happen. Find your people who care about health. You become the average of who you spend time with, biologically too. And limit time with people who make you feel small. That is also medicine.
That makes sense. All right, now let's number 6. The sixth pillar here, our final one, is avoidance of toxic substances.
Tobacco, excessive alcohol, recreational drugs. This is the pillar people sometimes roll their eyes at, and yet tobacco is still the leading preventable cause of disease and death in this country. The piece I want busy professionals to hear: alcohol is not the wellness habit it gets marketed as. Even moderate alcohol disrupts sleep architecture, raises blood pressure, raises breast cancer risk in women, and worsens insulin resistance.
Yeah, very, very, very true stuff. Okay, now that we've gone through those, let's say a new client comes to you. How do you assess where they are to prioritize the interventions and how to start going through the pillars and get it started? So, what does it look like?
So I do 3 things. Number one, a full symptom history, not just what's wrong with you, but where they are at their energy level, their sleep, mood, their digestion, stress level, their relationships. Those 10 to 15 minutes of real questions tell me more than any lab could tell me. And number two, obviously, we go over their labs, the same labs we discussed before: fasting insulin, HOMA IR, ApoB, lipoprotein A, CRP, TSH, B12, liver enzymes, kidney function. We catch what has been missed for years. And number three, I prioritize by leverage, not by the lab number. I ask which one pillar, if we fix it first, will domino into others. For most professionals, it is the sleep first, and then food, movement, and stress comes. The mistake people make is trying to fix everything in one day. We pick one thing for 1 to 2 weeks and then layer.
That makes sense. What are the types of conditions you're most commonly helping clients reverse or improve upon?
The big ones are prediabetes or type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, fatty liver, PCOS, high cholesterol, brain fog and chronic fatigue, anxiety, mood symptoms tied to the metabolic dysfunction, sleep issues, and perimenopausal symptoms that are largely metabolic in origin.
Okay. So, what are some of the, in general terms, what it would look like for a patient journey from initial symptoms to when they measure improvements?
They will feel less foggy. They would have lost a lot of weight, if not much. I have seen patients losing way more than 10 pounds in 3 months. And the other thing is, I think first comes the symptoms, then comes their labs improve, and overall, they feel better about their life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wonderful. What are some of the mistakes that high performing professionals make when they try to optimize their own health on their own?
Well, five big ones. I see them all the time. They
Mhm.
optimize one thing aggressively, usually exercise or fasting, but they ignore all other five pillars. They measure nothing. No labs, no glucose data, no sleep tracking. You can't change what you can't track. They biohack without basics, cold plungings, sauna, supplements, but they are sleeping 6 hours and eating 12 grams of fiber. They skip strength training. Cardio only is a mistake in midlife. Muscle is your metabolic insurance. They underestimate alcohol and chronic stress. They will fix everything except two things that are actually driving their dysfunction.
It makes sense. And I can say that from someone who's experienced trying to do it all on my own and noticing things where I needed to change things up, especially at the gym. I was doing the same things all the time and not getting the right gains until I talked to a trainer and you changed things up. And it was like I had more time, more effective. And, but so many of us today try hard to figure everything out our own. We're using AI, we're using all these different resources, and we're listening to all these videos, and we think, I've got it all figured out. But people make mistakes doing that. So let's talk about if you had to pick one change that tends to produce the most immediate improvement in energy and mental clarity, what would that be?
Honest answer, a ton a 10-minute walk after meals, especially after dinner,
Huh.
plus stopping food 3 hours before bed. That's a combo, 5 nights a week. It improves glucose, lowers cortisol, deepens sleep, drops morning insulin, gives your nervous system a runaway. Most people feel a difference in their morning energy by day four. It is the single highest leverage move I know.
Yeah. Can you explain what that means when we're spiking the blood sugar by snacking after we're done eating? It's 8 o'clock and we're going to bed at 10 and I will grab some string cheese and I know I probably shouldn't and I should stop when I'm done eating at 7.
So, so if you're eating string cheese at 8 p.m., right? Any animal fat or protein that you eat, it worsens your insulin resistance. And if you're eating even, you say, simple fruit, apple, or some mango with it, I'm just giving you an example. So what you just did is you're eating sugar along with something that is worsening your insulin resistance. Your sugar is going to spike and then it's going to crash down in the middle of the night. And that's where your cortisol will come in to keep your blood sugar stable while you're sleeping. But the problem is your cortisol spikes. That's when you wake up. That's when you wake up very anxious and you have these racing thoughts. That's why eating early probably on a high protein, high fiber diet as in the dinner, especially for your dinner, is so important.
All right. Good to know. All right. So, how does your clinical background as an internal and lifestyle medicine physician, how does this inform your work in medical-legal review? And what do attorneys often misunderstand about medical standards of care involving chronic diseases or metabolic syndrome?
So it's actually a natural extension on how I practice. As a hospitalist, I have spent years doing complex differential diagnoses under pressure. And as a member of medical quality review committee, see, I'm fumbling in between because my brain fog is setting in. My work includes looking at a chart and figuring out what was missed, what should have been ordered, and what was the timeline of events and decision points. That's exactly the skill set medical legal review demands. When I review a case, doing three things: reconstructing the clinical picture from records, labs, imaging, notes, etc., identifying the decision points. Where did the clinician have information that should have changed the plan? Comparing what was done to what a reasonable physician would do under similar circumstances. So, your answer to your next question on how does attorneys often misunderstand about metabolic standards, three things come up over and over. Number one, they think the standard of care is a fixed checklist. It's not. The standard of care is what a reasonable physician would do under similar circumstances at the time of decision. And reasonable physician can disagree. Two, compound, two competent doctors can manage the same patient differently and both be within the standard. Attorneys sometimes treat it as a binary, and it is not. Number two, they underestimate how much of a chronic disease is about failure to monitor over time, not a single missed diagnosis. A diabetic who loses a foot 10 years after diagnosis is rarely the result of one bad visit. It's usually the cumulative result of skipped follow ups, unaddressed medication adjustments, and ignored patient complaints. Building those timelines correctly is very essential. And number three, they often overlook the metabolic backstory. A heart attack in a 47-year-old isn't bad luck. There were usually labs showing insulin resistance, elevated ApoB, inflammation, fatty liver for years. The question isn't just did the cardiologist do the right thing during the event? The question is did the primary care chain of providers act on metabolic warning signs that were sitting in the record for decades? That's the lens I bring. And it's increasingly important as our population gets sicker younger.
Wow, it's so true. And as someone who's reviewed medical records before, I know so many times none of this was considered. And it was just patient presents with this, give them a pill for that. Patient comes back, still having problems. Here's another pill. Now we have the two pill. Now, I mean, all you have to do is watch the news at night and see if you're on this pill, you need that pill, and that pill is going to set you sideways, so you need another pill. Maybe we mean we need a few less pills, and
Well,
get
I'm
back.
laughing.
Yeah, right. It's true though, and we could take two routes, and we could condemn all the systems around us and all the industries and the business of it all, or we could focus on getting our health right, learning and understanding what metabolic issues are and how to address chronic diseases and metabolic syndrome. So last question, Dr. Handa. If someone is listening right now and feels a little off, tired, foggy, they're not themselves, and they're doing everything right, they believe, what is the first step that they should take?
Well, instead of first step, I'll give you three steps, and they're very simple steps. Number one, believe yourself. What you are feeling is real and it's information. It's just not stress or just not aging, please. Stop dismissing your own data. Number two, start with a single change tomorrow. A 10-minute walk after meals or just after dinner, 5 nights this week. That's it. And number three, get the right labs. Get your ApoB, get your lipoprotein A to see if you have any genetics that puts you at increased risk of heart disease. Get your CRP to see how much inflammation you are having in your body. Bring the list of your next physical to your doctor and ask for these tests. If the doctor pushes back, respectfully bring it anyway. This is your body.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Anna Honda. Where can people get more information from you?
Well, they can download the CogniBios app that I built it all by myself, keeping everything, the CogniBios framework, my patients' complaints and their issues that they suffer with every day. You can get it on iOS or Google Play. It includes 24/7 AI coach, daily personalized meal plans, my favorite, glucose spike prediction from a meal photo only, and symptom tracking. And you can also schedule appointment with me through the app, or you can visit my website, cognibios.ai. I do have YouTube channel under my name, Dr. Anna Handa, and Instagram and Facebook at CogniBios again. And one closing line I want to say, you don't have to inherit the diseases that broke the generations before us. You are not aging, you are getting signals. Listen to them now, and you get your decades back.
I believe in that 100%. Thank you so much for being with us today. And thank you to all the people who listen to our programs and find our information out there in social media. This Healthcare Consultants podcast episode brought to you by the healthcare consulting firm and health law and litigation professional licensing firm as well of Michael V. Fabia and Associates in Chicago and Rolling Meadows. This has been your host, Nick Augustine, again with Dr. Anna Honda. We thank her so much for your time. Thank you again.
Thank you, Nick.